Hi YouTube, welcome back. I'm sure there will be a lot of background noise for this one because, well, it's the middle of the day. I haven't showed you this part of the garden yet. That actually made it into a video. Anyway, this is our expansion for the year. This here is a 24-foot bed, 4 feet wide, with cinder blocks. And then behind me there, which is hard to see because I'm kind of blocking it, is a 10-foot by 4-foot bed with cinder blocks. We went with cinder blocks this year because it was actually cheaper than buying the wood. I tried to do a video on setting it up and filling it because we actually ordered some dirt. I was so excited to get a truckload of dirt. But it never got edited right, and yeah. So anyway, here it is, October, and you finally get to see my tomatoes, which do not look good. There are 32 indeterminate larger size, well, medium to large size tomatoes in this 24-foot bed. Now here we don't have a lot of humidity, so I can generally get away with planting them 18 to 20 inches apart. Some places you can't do that, but here you can. But you got to keep them single stemmed. If you notice, those don't look single stemmed. Yeah, oops. I have mentioned in a previous video how I had a lot of back issues over the summer, and there was a lot of times where I couldn't get outside and things kind of got away from me. Well, the tomatoes is the biggest one that got away from me. Oh, now we're gonna mow our lawn. Okay. Lots of background noise, I apologize, but it's supposed to rain for like the next week, so I probably won't be able to redo this at any point. So I had decided to do the Florida weave, which I'm not a huge fan of, especially for indeterminate tomatoes. But because they were so close together and I didn't want to have to buy that many stakes, 32 stakes, I went with the Florida weave. Less wood, less cost, trying to keep the cost down a little bit. And yeah, when you get behind on Florida weave, they go crazy, and it's a lot harder to get them fixed. I only got them about halfway up. I was in the process of fixing them, but then we had a whole bunch of rain where I couldn't get outside, and then they just grew so much like this that now they're so intertwined with all, because there's a lot of suckers in there too. I trimmed some, not all of them, but they're so intertwined. You've got ones on the back row coming up into the strings on the front row, and it's a mess. They've got some blights. There's still a little bit up here in this corner that I don't even know if you can see that or not. But yeah, blight has hit, and because they were just all, yeah, it kind of hit harder than usual. But at this point in the year, I'm just waiting for them to finish ripening what they have on them. I have been blessed with a lot of tomatoes. I have currently 12 gallon-sized bags in my freezer, and I'd say there's at least 4 more bags worth on the plants, assuming I actually get them all, because we have had some issues with critters eating them, especially since they are low. At this point, it is what it is. I knew I didn't like the Florida weave because I've tried it before. I've talked about it before. But I did not foresee the extra back issues that would keep me from keeping up with it. In my garden planning, I keep trying to develop a plan for my yard, which has its own limitations, that will make it best for the plants and easiest for me to grow. So next year I want to get more of the rolled fencing, although probably like a taller one. I know they come in at least 5 feet tall. I'm not sure if there's a 6 feet tall. There might be. That would even be better. But I'm going to put some fencing on the poles. I might even get new poles. I might get some metal ones. And have 2 walls. That way, if I do have another back issue next year, or any other year, that at least it won't be as bad trying to catch up with it. Or if, you know, something just happens and, you know, someone gets sick and we have to go out of town or whatever, that it won't be as bad to fix it if it does get away from me. So I want to have the 2 walls with some space in between. That way there will be airflow and some separation between them. But even with that mess, and it's a hot mess, I've gotten so many tomatoes, more than I did last year, and which is awesome. God is great. And even with all these issues, I still have been blessed with a lot of tomatoes. And I think if I put the wall in next year, it'll be even better. I like having them here. They are closer to the water, so I did water them a little bit more than the rest of the garden. Not much more, but we also did have a lot of rainfall this year too. So for the most part, I didn't really need to water. But it is closer to the water, so it's less of a pain in the butt. Because my hose is right there, and the rest of the garden is around and on the other side. It does not reach every part of my garden, even when you stretch it all the way out. So that part was great. That worked a lot easier over here. I'm going to plant the tomatoes like that again next year, just with the wall. So my other bright idea for this year, to try and save on space, was to plant calendula in the block holes of this 24-foot long bed. Yeah. I grew calendula last year, and it didn't get very big. And I thought it was very productive for the little plant that it was. So I planted calendula all the way down on this front side. South is that way, so they would get more sun up there. And part of the reason why the tomatoes got away from me early on this side was because my calendula was absolutely ginormous and was hanging out way into the walkway where I couldn't even reach the tomatoes. So I will not be doing that again. No. I actually had 24 calendula plants as volunteers from where I grew them last year that I transplanted over here early, and then after I got the tomatoes in, I put seed down the rest of the row. The 24 was more than I needed, for one thing, and oh my God, so productive. Even though, you know, the roots are probably like root bound in there, they apparently just needed more sun than they had last year, because they were very productive and very large, a lot larger than they were last year. So I got a great harvest from them, but it also impeded my ability to get into the tomatoes. So I'm not going to put them there next year. I haven't decided where I am going to put them yet, but I definitely don't need that many if they're going to get this much light. My other bright idea for the little bed was to put the Determinate tomatoes over there. And, you know, they're not as tall. I figure they'll be done sooner. And, you know, I don't need to worry about trimming suckers off of those, but I do need to keep them like caged in. So I had wanted to kind of use some string basically around some poles and make like little caged areas. Well, that never happened. So they got big and intertwined, so it was like I can't put string in between tomatoes anymore. We're past that already. So I put 4 posts in the corners and just kind of tried to get around the whole thing, because where the 2 beds are next to each other, some of the indeterminates were hanging over and the determinants were like this, and you couldn't walk through there. It was a big mess. So I used a board, slid a board underneath all the determinants, and a couple of us picked it up, like just pick up the whole board, hold it up, while I had my youngest run around it with the string just to get it up and out of the way so he could get in there and I could take care of the indeterminates. But still, it held it up for a couple of days and then it just kind of flopped over. It did not work as a caging method for those tomatoes. Also, I didn't get a lot from those tomatoes. They're not done yet, even though they were planted the same time these were. Those are still, half of them are green, and I didn't get a lot. So I may not do any determinants next year. I told myself last year I wasn't going to do any determinants, and then I decided to put that bed in. But I did see a video from M.I. Gardener where he had a 45-day tomato that was a fairly small plant. Like it was only about this tall, you know, like 1.5 feet, 2 feet, somewhere around there, loaded with little tomatoes, not cherries or anything, but smaller tomatoes. That was a 45-day variety. I'm not sure what variety they were, but I am looking into that. I may do some of that for a late round, although I've never had good luck with late round tomatoes. That might make a difference though if it's such a short day variety. So I'm still deciding, because of course I've already started planning next year. I'm still deciding what I'm going to do with that bed. But I will probably not grow any of those types of tomatoes. I had Independence Day, Rosa Bianca, and there's a third type. I can't remember the name offhand, but that's okay. They got very big and they just didn't produce all that much. It was still average, like nothing wowed me. The problem with the 32 indeterminates, there's so many varieties in there and they're all crisscrossed. I don't even know what varieties I was tasting. I did find one that kept coming out like a dark pink that I really like, and I want to grow that one, a lot of them next year, but I'm not sure which variety it was, so I'll have to try again. But having so many varieties of tomatoes just kind of make my brain hurt, so I don't think I'm going to do that again. I'm going to pick like maybe 1 or 2 that I'm not sure if I got any of, and then the rest of them ones that I know are good, that I like. So my tomatoes have been a hot mess, but delicious and productive, even with all the issues. So your garden doesn't have to look perfect or like it belongs in a magazine. Mine certainly did not, at least not over here. But it doesn't have to look perfect to grow a lot of food. And I've gotten a lot of food this year. Like, that has been great. Some things could work better, but I learned a lot. I'll do a separate video on everything that I've learned this year. But I learned a lot this year. And some of it good, some of it bad. There's a lot of things that I did this year that I'm going to do again because it was so good. And a lot of things that I learned this year that I definitely shouldn't do here. Doesn't mean it wouldn't work somewhere else, in a different area, in a different environment, but it didn't work for me. And a big point of a lot of the things that I do is to learn from it. I try all kinds of weird stuff, and it may work for me, it may not. But you never know until you try. So even if your garden looks like a hot mess, I hope it is giving you a lot of wonderful homegrown food that is better for you than anything you find in the store. So many cars in the middle of the day. But anyway, I think that's everything on the tomatoes. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope maybe you learned something, or at least had a good laugh. Or maybe felt better about your own garden that maybe doesn't look as much of a hot mess as mine. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for coming along with me today. May God bless you. Shalom.